Hey, expats and travelers alike. I am Josh with Expats Everywhere.
And I'm Kalie.
And what a year it's been. There has been plenty of changes. We're going to get into that. We're very excited that you're here. We want to talk about what all has happened in Portugal over the course of the year, because it's really important to know what has happened to kind of predict what will happen in the future. So let's delve into the past and then we'll get into the future. So a lot of things changed around October when NHR was announced to possibly be going away. The prime minister resigned after being kind of drawn into a scandal. And there was a new government that was going to be announced or is going to be announced in March of 2024. CEF became AIMA. Things got more expensive here. Opportunities for us personally to socialize grew. And we had some friends that have moved away. New demographics of people have moved here. We're going to answer your questions as we go. So let's first start out with kind of the timeline of what has happened in Portugal. Kalie, let's go.
All right. So if we start at the beginning of the year of 2023, the first thing that was big and talked about a lot was the golden visa going away, right? So is it going away? What's it look like? Is it going to be something that's going to replace it? And that happened around mid-February.
Yep. There was a housing reform that was one of the major talking points really all year. And short-term rental licenses were basically being cut off. And then in April,
then the president actually vetoed the bill. So this had the golden visa put in there. So there was a lot of talk about, like, would it go through, would it not? There were groups and lawyers that were fighting it. And so it was a bit of a shock that the president actually vetoed that part of it, because it almost seemed like it was a done deal. So they pass it through Parliament. President vetoes it, and then they're kicking it back to Parliament to see if it would go through.
Yeah, later in the year, September, there was an act that was put in called Mais Habitação, I think, and that would arise, and then the president, Sousa, would not veto that. So what happens in May?
So before we get to May, for those who are interested, Mais Habitação, if you research that, you'll get a lot of information on that, and it's going to break down exactly for you what was in that housing bill and how that could possibly affect you for ALs, golden visa, all that stuff, which happened a little more later on in the year as well, right?
And when Kalie says AL, it's alojamento local. So that would be when people use kind of the synonym Airbnb, it's short-term rental. Okay, it's short-term rental.
So then we get into May, where there was a scandal around TAP. TAP is an airline and it's government owned. So there was a bit of a scandal with the prime minister here, and there were calls for the president to dissolve parliament, but they kind of smoothed it over and nothing came of it, I suppose you could say. No, yeah. I mean, like, obviously it's a scandal, so it doesn't look great, but the parliament wasn't dissolved or anything. It was just kind of like figured out.
Yeah, exactly. And in English, there wasn't a ton of news when this broke and actually what happened. There was a lot of talk about this TAP scandal, but there wasn't a ton of detailed information on what this scandal was. It was basically an irregular severance payment that was made to a board member. And I guess some people in government were kind of wrapped up in it.
Right.
That's kind of all we know.
So that was big news, but then again, we moved on. We went into the summer months, I suppose.
Summer months, a lot of positive, well, some positive stuff, some negative stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there wasn't as much that was going on that was, scandal or crazy, but of course, still some crazy, right?
Yeah. In August, at the beginning of August, the city was overrun with youth.
In a good way.
It was very good.
Listen.
So I shouldn't even say city, the whole country. So when Portugal hosted the World Youth Day, and it was just packed with people from all around the world, youth.
Yes. So that was really fun to see. And there was a lot of buzz going on. But the actual youth day was held in Lisbon, wasn't it?
Fatima.
Oh, okay.
I believe.
But it gave an opportunity for a lot of youth from all over the world to travel Portugal. So you definitely saw that presence there. So that was a lot of fun. And there was a lot about that on TV. So that was in August. And then, of course, in August, too, we commonly hear about the wildfires that go on around. If it's a, especially dry winter, then we tend to have wildfires in the summers for sure.
Yeah.
So we did have some issues with wildfires, mainly out in the eastern part of the country, right? More eastern. It doesn't always really get to the city, but sometimes we get smoke and everything that could come here.
Yeah. I mean, it was an Iberian wildfire. I think 7,000 hectares destroyed, 1,400 people displaced.
Mm.
So it was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, so that's not great. So then we have August, but then moving into more of the fall, October
Is
is
when
when
all things
all the big
let
news,
loose.
really. I mean, like we were saying before, we had the golden visa, which was a big topic of conversation going on throughout the year. But then I feel like that was a little overshadowed by everything going on in October because the prime minister announced at the beginning of October on like a CNN town hall type interview that NHR is going away.
Yeah, and it was pretty informal. It was kind of just like thrown out there, and it caused a lot of panic in the background. And I think that panic was justified in a way.
Well, and it kind of came out of nowhere as well. That's the other thing is a lot of these things generally you kind of hear like murmurs and rumors and then it happens or then it passes through or whatever. But this one was kind of like, boom, NHR is going away. And so chaos. So that was the beginning of October. But then, of course, it would get more interesting.
October 6th, the Mais Habitação law was, I guess, published, enacted by the Portuguese government. And basically, it brought along a series of changes to the Golden Visa program. So it was like you couldn't really invest in real estate anymore.
That was officially gone.
That caused a bit of panic among some Golden Visa people. But I think, well, overall, we have our opinions about Golden Visa in the sense that it's taking a long time for Golden Visas to be processed anyways. So it might not be people's best option if they're planning to live in Portugal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else happened in
October?
Gone.
The Golden Visa is gone. And
for real estate.
Yes. There
are other investment opportunities.
But if you go online and you research this bill, you can get a really in-depth feel. And there is a lot of stuff in English too. So you can get an in-depth feel as to what the bill like breaks down a little more than what we're going to do today.
Yeah.
So look up that.
And the biggest thing that has impacted most immigrants has been what happened at the end of October.
So CEF kind of dismantled or changed into different groups, right?
Officially, unofficially.
Yeah, it kind of did. And then it kind of went back. So this is something that's been actually talked about for a couple years, but it hasn't really been implemented. And then in October, it was kind of implemented to where the immigration that we think about when we're processing visas and such went to a body called AIMA.
Yeah.
Right. So they kind of did the main processing thing on the front end of like what CEF did do.
Yeah. AIMA, it roughly translates to Agency for Integration, Migration and Asylum. And then there's also two other kind of divisions of what CEF did that got pushed to different agencies or institutions that are in the country. So one would be like what Americans would consider ICE, or like the border control and police of the borders and immigration. That is now with other police institutions, whether it be local police or the GNR. That would be the Guardia Nacional Republicana, I think. Mm-hmm. And then the third aspect of this, the third leg, I guess, would be the Institute of Registry and Notary. That division is responsible for issuing passports and residence permits.
So that's more like the later steps that you go through. So if you're initially planning to move to Portugal and we talk about CEF, now it would be more AIMA, because if you think about CEF was everything that had to do with border control, and that's why they decided to split it, because there's some people who are processing visas and then there's some people who are actually protecting the border. So that's why they wanted to separate these two. So then CEF, like we think about it for visa processing, moved to AIMA, and then later on will be the IRN that you would have to deal with. But it switched to AIMA. But the switch did not go very well. So it
huge backlogs.
Switched back.
Yeah.
So we're kind of in this back and forth pattern right now with CEF, AIMA. So you might hear us moving forward talking about both. But eventually it is supposed to be a full-on move over to AIMA.
If you have recently renewed your residence permit and you have not received your new card, you're like most people that we've heard of.
Yep. Yeah,
so
it's been a bad switch over.
Yes.
Could take a while.
Now, November 7th.
Okay, so then we have this whole
news.
NHR thing that the prime minister, throws out there as being something. But then in November, beginning of November, there is a scandal, another scandal that arises that Costa wasn't, I guess, directly involved in, but it was his inner circle, I guess you could say.
His cabinet.
And allegedly a lot of people were involved. So all that to say, he resigned.
Yep. voluntarily.
He voluntarily resigned.
Yep.
Yes.
And then at the end of November, there was the budget meeting, and basically it got rid of NHR as we know it.
Yes. So that is going to be different moving forward into 2024, but there is going to be a bit of a transitional period. And we do plan on chatting with experts on this and getting content out to you about what that looks like if you don't get NHR, if you haven't qualified for it. But also we did have a question from David who emailed, and he wanted to know, what does it look like anyway after your NHR, your 10 years run out, which is really important to plan for. So we will be getting content out for you about that and speaking with financial advisors and stuff that we recommend.
Yeah. Speaking of questions, if you have any questions, pop them into the chat. We're going to keep moving forward with this live stream. We're going to talk just briefly about our personal lives and give you some highlights on what we've done, because I think it's important when you're talking about living abroad to find out like actually what people are doing. So there's like this information which we just gave you, but you also want to know like what kind of lifestyle am I going to live when I live abroad? Well, in Portugal, we have been living an awesome lifestyle. So what did we do beginning of January?
So I think a lot of you know that we like to travel a lot. And so a lot of our lifestyle is, getting around within Portugal and outside of Portugal, especially exploring the EU right now because it's a little easier. So we bring in the new year of January in the south of France. So we were in Nice. And then from there, we went to Monaco before coming back to Portugal.
Yeah, I was sick as a dog. In January, we also started a new podcast, and that podcast is killing it. So if you don't know, we have a podcast called Expats Everywhere Presents Let's Move to Portugal. And a lot of the kind of longer form interviews that we do get put over there. So if you're into longer form interviews that get a little more granular in topic, head over there.
Yep. That's a lot of fun. And then moving into February, a friend that we met when we lived in Singapore, because before Portugal, we lived in Singapore, and she's an American. She now lives in Vienna. So she came to visit us in Portugal, which is fun. And then we are going to hopefully visit her going into 2024.
Yep. Also in February, we went to Espinho, which is just south of Porto, south of Gaia as well, to do a city guide.
Yes. And then in March, we were in Lisbon and Aveiro. Again, Aveiro for content on the channel to do city guides and things like that.
Yeah. And end of March, we had a big trip back to the US, and we hadn't been back since we moved to Portugal, which was back in October of 2020. So it was our first time back. Valencia, our 3-year-old daughter, soon to be 4-year-old daughter, got to see family for the really first time since she left at 9 months of age. We stayed in my hometown and with my dad. So like that's Virginia, Tennessee area. And then we took a cruise out of Fort Lauderdale. We did a transatlantic cruise from Fort Lauderdale. It passed through Bermuda, Madeira, and then a couple cities in Spain. And then we finished in Barcelona.
Yes. So that was a really big trip, seeing lots of family and friends, which was a lot of fun. And a lot of people, I think, ask us how often we go back to the US. And it used to be that we didn't really travel back that much. But now I think with our daughter, we want to, visit family a little more often. So that was the first time, like Josh said, since we had moved here that we went back. And we'll see, maybe next year we'll go visit again. So then we had this long trip, 2 weeks back in the middle of the ocean, which was a lot of fun to get back to the EU, I guess you could say, back to Europe. And so that was in May. And
highly recommend it.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun if you like to cruise. I guess don't make it your first cruise because you don't know how you do out in the middle
seasick.
Of the ocean.
Yeah.
So then May was a little, chill.
May was chill. And in June, we went to Braga to film some more content for you all. We had already done a city guide in Braga, so we decided to do a couple different pieces. And then end of June was São João. We hit a major personal landmark. We bought our first property in Portugal, our first property abroad. And we're able to take the vertical community venture, if you're familiar with that piece of content on our channel, to kind of the next stage, right? And we've created a separate channel for that content.
That one's called Let's Get Building with Josh and Kalie. So if you want to see what a full-on renovation looks like in Porto, in Portugal, in the city, then you can head over there, subscribe, and we've got some movement going on. So we'll be getting a lot of good content out very soon.
Seems like demolition will start second week of January.
And I have been joking that I cannot wait to hold a sledgehammer and just break some stuff. So
yeah,
January, it will come.
July, we go to Iceland and Greenland for a cruise, which was very cool. And then in August, we Valencia, our daughter was out of school, so we took a road trip through Spain and Andorra.
Yes, and then we ended in Lisbon where we had a patron meetup and then an open meetup, which was a lot of fun. We also did a Benfica neighborhood guide, just adding to the neighborhoods playlist that we have for Lisbon.
And in September, we traveled to Guimarães with friends. We went to Vizela for their Noite em Branco, their white night party. And then we also went to Aveiro to film an interview for you.
Yep. And then in October, we had a lot of family and friends who were visiting. So that was fun seeing people from the US. And then we went to Rome and did another city guide there. That's on our other channel, though, Expats Everywhere Explores.
We filmed it. We haven't put it out.
It hasn't gone out yet.
Yeah.
Yep. But if you want to see content that's not specific to Portugal, then you want to be on Expats Everywhere Explores. And we do city guides and information there, whether you're interested in moving there or just want to see for travel. Because when you're in Europe, like what we're doing, you can travel a lot.
For sure. Let's see what else. November, we finally met with Dave in Portugal. So we invited him to his first Champions League game. And of course, it was FC Porto. And then we also visited Valencia's best friend who lives in London.
Yes. Used to live in Porto, but now they're in London, hopefully coming back to Porto. But yes, that was a good time being in London. And then I guess we wrapped up December. Obviously, we're still in December, but at the beginning of the month, we went to Madrid just for a few days to visit friends because we used to live in Madrid. So that was a lot of fun being able to see some people that we hadn't seen in several years, some people who I hadn't actually met Valencia yet.
Yeah, it's actually special. So we'll give them a shout out. Kalie's host family. When we lived in Spain, Kalie was an au pair for a family, and she hadn't seen the girl since. She left. You left Spain when the girl was 2.5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Now
she'll be 15 next month. We've seen her a couple times along the way, but we hadn't seen her since she was about 7 or 8. So
yeah, it's wild.
Quite a difference.
And then our best international friend Tom, we got to meet up with him. We have an upcoming trip to Italy. We leave tomorrow, and we're going to Turin, Genoa, Parma, Bologna, Rimini, and a tiny country called San Marino. We don't know what to expect there, but we're looking forward to exploring it. And we'll put podcast episodes out about those places as well as filming. It'll be Valencia's 20th country before turning 4 years old, which is mind-boggling.
She'll have to circle back to a few of them, though, because she won't remember some, right?
For sure. As a community, we hosted 8 open meetups, in-person meetups that you can plug into. Probably the best way to learn about these in-person meetups is getting on Kalie's email newsletter. And you can join that just by sending her an email at info@expatseverywhere.com. But we hosted one in January, February, May, July, August, September, October, November. We did not do one in December. And then we also had 2 patron-only meetups. So people that are on our Patreon page, we were able to do 2 like smaller, more exclusive meetups there.
And before we jump into the questions, I was just going to say that we live in Porto, so most of those are in Porto, but we did do one in August in Lisbon. And we try, if there's a big community that we can get plugged into or at least bring people together in a different city, we will try to do that a lot more moving into 2024. But if you're in Porto or in the Porto area, because people from Braga, Guimarães, Espinho, Aveiro even will come to these. So it's a good way to build your community.
For sure.
Okay, so jumping into questions.
I think we had one that we need to cover here, and then we'll get the chats.
Right. So earlier I mentioned, David, thank you for sending me an email with this question. We addressed the NHR thing that we would be interviewing and chatting with experts in 2024 about what NHR looks like once it actually runs out. We just put out a video last week with John. He's a financial advisor. He has really, really good advice on needing to set things up before you come. So whether you have NHR, can get it or cannot, you still need to set things up because eventually NHR will run out. So more on that in the coming year for sure. And then the other question is a difference between residency and citizenship. So as a lot of you, I think, know, when you come here, you are on your temporary residency for 5 years. Currently, you get it for 2 years and then you renew for 3 years. And then after that, you can choose. Do you want to do permanent residency or do you want to go for citizenship? Citizenship would get you that Portuguese passport and it unlocks a lot of the EU for you. You don't have to do that though. Some people don't want to, which is fine. You do not have to give up your US citizenship to do that, but you can have dual because of their agreement. One of the big, I think, stumbling blocks or concern for people is that you have to take a language test. So you can either take a class, A1, A2, and get a certificate from an approved class who does that,
Institution.
an
Yeah.
approved institution that who does that, or you take an actual test at citizenship. So that's up to you if you want to do it. Permanent residency is also something you can do. Now, the biggest difference is with the citizenship, you are free to roam with, nothing's really holding you back.
Yeah.
With the permanent residency, because it's as if you're supposed to be living in Portugal as a resident, you could lose your permanent residency if you're outside of Portugal longer than 2 years. So if you're planning on going somewhere after your NHR runs out because taxes are too high in Portugal, you couldn't really go anywhere for an extended period of time without losing that permanent residency status. This is where it might be better to become a citizen of Portugal.
Yeah, and you would essentially signify that you're not in the country, because if you're trying to not get hit with the high taxes after 10 years, then you're going to claim the country that you've moved to, that you're there as a tax resident, and thus be signaling to Portugal that you're no longer living there. So citizenship in this regard would be better. All right. CJ asked a question. Have you guys been to the Azores? If so, what did you like about it? We have been to the Azores. We filmed a video there about Ponta Delgada. That's the only place that we've been really in the Azores. São Miguel, I should say. As an island, we traveled around the island. What did I like about São Miguel? The people were fantastic. The topography was very interesting. Yeah, the dairy was great.
Very good.
But I think that we would probably get a little bit of island fever just because it's so isolated. When we lived in Singapore, yes, it's an island, but it's surrounded by so many interesting places to visit in Southeast Asia. So I think that would be it. Check out that video about São Miguel.
And we do plan on going back to visit the other islands as well.
Yeah. Tamara, hello. Yeah, we hope you can catch back up on the live. The next question is from Why You Trippin'? Is NHR still being canceled?
Yes.
Yes.
So they did vote at the end of November to approve that bill that has NHR being canceled. They are going to have a transitional period in 2024. So essentially, if you had put the wheels in motion in 2023 and you have proof of that, then you can still apply for NHR in 2024.
Check out that criteria.
Yes. So we have a couple videos on that. But, we're looking at December 21st. Not many government agencies are going to be working for much longer. So if you haven't done anything yet, then it might be too late. But yes, it's going to be canceled. And one thing we did with the recap, we were talking about what happened this year. So with the resignation of the prime minister, there's going to be snap elections in March.
Yes.
So that's going to be something that's really big because Parliament was dissolved.
Yes.
The president dissolved Parliament, which is a big deal as well. So in March, so we'll see if NHR comes back in any sort of way.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Debbie Diver talks about her glowing service from Border. Border helps with bank accounts, with NIFs, with taxes now.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to use our link in the description section below, that will certainly help us out. We recommend Border because we have used them personally and they've been fantastic for us. So yes, you're right, Debbie. It is a discount coupon. You can use the discount code. So
use our code or our link to get $10 off of their services, but really good services.
Yeah. Okay. Next is, hey, this is from Ben.
Hey, Ben.
Hey, Jane K. Got your note and found the live feed. Looking forward to seeing. Oh, okay. We look forward to seeing you.
He emailed me.
Got it. All right. we have a great question from Adam, which is, are you cheering for Arsenal or Porto in the Champions League?
All right. Let's give a little context. People.
If you don't know us, we're massive soccer fans or football fans, depending on where you're from, what you call it. We have been Arsenal fans first. Like Arsenal was my first club, like real club that I loved. And then Porto is the club of the place that we live. But we have liked Porto for a while, even before we moved here. I don't think right now I care who wins. We're super, super excited to go. We're looking at this positively in the sense that at least we get to see both teams that we like in the Champions League, and one of the teams is going to go on to the next round. So we're happy about that. Maybe if I dive deep into my soul, I would say Arsenal, because I think they have a better chance of winning the whole dang thing. So
that's a good point.
Arsenal.
That's a tough one.
I'm going to say Arsenal. I'm going to say Arsenal. Let's go. I want Porto to win at home and then Arsenal to win at the Emirates.
It'll be fun to watch, though. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Donovan asked a super important question. You mentioned in a recent video something about taking a language class for citizenship language requirements instead of taking the test. Can you explain a little more about the class?
Yes. So there are approved classes all over the country. You need to make sure that it's approved to give you a certificate that you've passed. And you do the A1 and the A2. So you have to pass the A2 level, which is actually fairly low if you think about how it starts with A, B, C as far as your language proficiency. So if you don't want to actually just take the test to get your citizenship, you can do these approved classes, and they vary. Some of them could be 5 days a week, and then it's a lot more rigorous. Obviously, if it's a couple hours, 5 days a week, then it's going to be in a shorter time period because there are a certain amount of hours that you have to be in the classroom. Or you could have something that's maybe twice a week for 3 hours. Excuse me, that's going to be much further. So it could be anywhere from like maybe a 6-month to do your A1, A2, all the way to like an 18-month type thing, depending on who you go with. The government does have some of these at their public institutions, which those are free. Hard to get into, sometimes waitlisted, so don't do it last minute, or there are paying ones as well that you can do. So you can choose to do that to pass your A2 and get that certificate rather than taking a test.
Yes. Okay. So Murky asks, is there any news about the NHR transitional regime? Thanks. There's nothing really official. So I would say we're probably not going to hear about NHR 2.0 much until the new government forms.
But
Do you
a
have
couple
a different
things that
opinion
they
on
have
that?
confirmed is that if you already have NHR, then you
Not
keep
losing
it.
it.
You're like grandfathered
That's
in a
right.
way. And that 2024 is a transitional period. So like I was saying, if you have gotten it even at the end of the year now, towards the end of the year after the announcement, or you had the wheels in motion before the announcement because there's some time frame you have to look at, then you can still apply for it in 2024. So it is going away, but
okay, so I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't paying attention to Kalie when she was talking about this. Did you explain the dates for registration, like the fiscal year registration?
No, I didn't.
So
I was saying there are dates, but
yeah, so typically when you go through the tax calendar, you have specific dates where you need to do certain things. NHR registration happens, I think, by the end of March on the year after the tax filing that you're looking to file for. So essentially,
sounds
I don't mean
confusing.
to convolute that. So in this way, this transitional period, we're looking at the end of March 2024, still being able to file for NHR, assuming that you met the criteria from 2023.
Yeah.
Did I say that well?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
I guess in the comments, let us know if that's confusing. It is a very confusing situation, I suppose.
Yeah.
But it's ever evolving. And come 2024, we'll start to get little snippets as well, which is why we want to put more content out about it, because it's even when speaking with some experts that we know, it's kind of like we got to wait and see how this unfolds, especially with how things go in March.
Murky also asks, how's the weather in Porto this December? Now, I like that you say this December because this December has been a little different. I think it's been several degrees colder than it has been the past few years. We've been waking up in the morning to temperatures that are in like the mid to upper 30s.
Yeah.
Which is quite cold for Porto.
Yeah.
Fortunately, we've been, 30s, 40s, and low 50s, but clear skies.
Yep. Sunny.
That's been good. That's been I will take that. I'll take cold and clear versus moderately cold and rainy.
Yeah, that's the thing, is if it does rain, or when it does rain, because that will happen, it will be a little warmer. It's not both. It's not like rain and cold at the same time. So it is a little interesting that it is cooler than normal. But we also had a early rain, like in end of October, beginning of November, which was weird as well.
Yeah. Next question is from Chinese Crested. How is it that you can leave Portugal while going through the D7 NHR process? I thought you could not leave for at least a year. Let me explain part of that. The D7 and NHR are two separate things. So one is immigration. The other one is tax residency.
Taxes. Yeah, so they are different.
They're separate in that regard. So do you want to explain?
Right. So clarification with the D7, when you apply for the D7 in your home country and then you get your approved stamp, you can then come over to Portugal. That's your entry that you can have. Between that and your residency appointment, CEF for, SEF AIMA appointment, which finalizes your residency, that gets you your card, you are allowed to leave and come back one time. So that essentially gives you 2 entries into Portugal, one leaving. Your first entry that you come in, and if there's really an emergency, it's set up for emergency situations that you have to leave, you can come back. But in between that time of your first arrival with the D7 visa being approved and your residency appointment that's in Portugal, then you can only leave and come back one time. So it's best to just stay there. And then, or stay in Portugal, stay in your spot. But then after you have that residency, that's when your clock starts to tick. And that's when you can't be outside of Portugal longer than 6 months consecutively or 8 months total within your visa period. So that for right now, that's for the first 2 years until your renewal.
Yep. Dino, we're sorry that we missed your Christmas party in Villa de Conde.
Yeah.
We do look forward to getting up there and doing a city guide on Villa de Conde and also Povoda Varzim in 2024. Forgot to mention that.
Yes. I will say one other thing on the DISA. If there are D7 on the D7 visa, maybe I should just call that
the DISA.
The D7 visa or the D8 visa as well. I do consultations for these kinds of things. So if you have specific questions on how it works and what your stay requirements are or how to fill out your applications or anything like that, then what we can do is probably after this in the description, put my link. I have a Calendly link that you can set up a consultation with me so I can specifically help you on any of these questions that you might have.
Yeah. Or if you want a DIY course that you can go through at your own pace, we do have that as well. And we have created a code just for you.
December 2023.
Oh, 2023.
Yeah, and
December 2023.
There's only 10. So, yeah. So you have until
get it fast.
Yeah, you have until the end of this month to get $15 off. I think is what it is.
I think so.
We'll put that in the description as well, but I think all that will have to be after.
Shows what I know.
Yeah, I think you set it up.
I think I did.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have a couple more questions here regarding Porto Gaia region for buying property. What's your take on Povoda Varzim? We've heard it's an affordable version of Matosinhos. Okay, so this is interesting. Yeah. If we're talking about buying property, yeah, go for it. Definitely. I think if you're talking about an investment property, I don't have enough information, honestly, how solid the investments are there. But I will say that like Matosinhos, Porto, Gaia have much better kind of branding and name recognition and interest from people. So those to me would be more solid assets.
But if you crunch your numbers, depending, because Povoda Varzim is on the metro line to Porto, so it is connected in that sense. So as things grow and get bigger, it will also develop a bit more. So you got to think, I guess if you're trying to play that game, then you think that through. And we will in early 2024, we are going to do a city guide on Povoda Varzim so you can see what it looks like. So that could be something if you want to take a look at numbers for like rent and buying there. We will have that come out as well.
Yeah, we've got a couple more really good questions. So Lewis asks, after 3 years, how would you characterize your proficiency with the Portuguese language? I think that we're probably into A2. We're not into B yet. We're probably into A2, but let me give you kind of more context to really what that looks like. If someone is speaking pretty standard Portuguese to us, we're catching most of what they say. The issue we have right now is being able to put together like grammatically correct communication sentences in Portuguese. I have found that I'm able to communicate in Portuguese without too much problems. However, I know that I'm making errors. People will sometimes correct me, sometimes won't, but I don't often say something in Portuguese where
people
don't know
are
what
like,
you're
saying
what?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's definitely a big difference from our first 2 years. Like for sure that would happen our first year. People would be like, what is this guy saying? And then I would just like, put my head in my hoodie and walk away.
No, you wouldn't. They're so kind. They help you. But also to put in context, A2 is still beginner level, right? It's like, so the good thing is, although you do have to pass a class or take a test, A2 is very achievable no matter what age you are. So you just have to decide which one's going to make you more comfortable. And this is something that I struggle with because I get like test anxiety. So while I do feel like I could pass an A2 exam, will the nervousness like be too much for me? So should I take a course? But that's a long time, like a long time commitment with having our daughter and work and travel and everything. So it's kind of trying to decide that. But yeah, I think as far as an A2, like we can definitely chat with people and get around. And now it's kind of just building our vocabulary and grammar and such.
Yeah, I think it's more like verb conjugations on the fly.
Yeah.
That's where I struggle.
That's not present tense. That's what I think. I think present tense is pretty good, but then if we want to talk about past or future, then that's when I do really have to think about it.
Yep. All right. Why You Trippin' also asks, is YouTube AdSense income taxed under the NHR regime, or is it considered royalties income? Okay. So we turn our tax stuff over to a Portuguese accountant, and I'm pretty sure that I've seen it on there as royalties. But don't quote me on that.
Check with a Portuguese accountant, because there are different ways to file. You have to file in both the U.S. and in Portugal.
The thing, well, I say that, but the thing is, like, our company, Expats Everywhere, is like, we're employees of Expats Everywhere. It's taxed first in the U.S.
It's a U.S. company.
So, but I think I have,
Well, we still have to have it on.
I'm confusing two things. Okay. I think I have looked it up, and YouTube AdSense is as royalties. It just, that doesn't work for us.
Apply for us because we pay for it in the U.S.
Yeah.
And because of the double taxation treaty that they have in our taxes, because it's a U.S. company, we pay there first.
Yeah.
Yep. But ask a professional.
I think we're kind of getting to the end. Last one that I'm seeing, we have two more. Is it true that immigration in Portugal is out of control? And with that, increasing thefts, crimes in general? Thoughts? Okay, this is a good question. We do hear that immigration in Portugal is out of control. I think that a lot of that noise happens online, and there aren't really numbers that I've seen that back that up. Like, what does it mean to be out of control? Like, I don't see it being illegal immigration. I think people are coming through the correct way. If you're asking that immigration is out of control from the standpoint of the country not being able to keep up with immigration processing, thank you. That's a problem. That is out of control. I mean, it's taking way too long.
But that's maybe a bit more on like the government side of not being as efficient, maybe not hiring enough people, overworking people. So that, slows it down and burns people out.
Seeing an increase of theft and whatnot from just from an eye test, I would say no.
Yeah, from a personal feel of being around the city, I
haven't noticed it. Haven't heard people that we know like being mugged, or there more car break-ins than normal or whatever.
I still feel very safe walking around.
Yeah.
And now it gets dark earlier just because, we're in winter, and I think it's fine. So we haven't seen that stuff personally. Obviously doesn't mean that it hasn't happened, but we haven't seen it personally.
Why You Trippin'? Thank you. Why You Trippin' says, everyone smash that thumbs up, that like button. That's funny.
That's really nice.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And Petty Nerd just ordered the D7 guide. Thanks for the discount. Thank you for the order. Appreciate it.
Well, you better hurry. I don't think there's very many left.
You all are awesome. Okay, so Autumn says, question for both of us. Unless this was covered previously, and they were unfortunate to be late, have all the changes in the government lately impacted us or our plans?
That's a good question. I guess I'll start.
You can answer that.
Yeah, I'll say no. Our plans are still the same. We had been talking about buying a property. Actually, it took us a long time to find it. Buy, renovate, live in it. And that's still on course. That hasn't changed. We had always talked about what would life look like after an HR did run out for us, because we will still be working then. So what will that look like? And we have to see kind of what taxes are like in the hit that we take. So could that mean that we get our citizenship and then we go somewhere else in Europe? It's possible. I think a big driving force that I always think about is what's school going to look like for Valencia. So right now she's in a private Portuguese school. We'll probably get her into something a little more international, but we wanted her to get the language down for sure. So then what is school going to look like after, 10 years or so? And is it a good time to transition to a different country with school? But as far as all the stuff that's impacted, all these changes and the crazy resignation stuff, like it hasn't really made us feel unstable or like change our plans. What would you say?
Yeah. So I think I have a little bit of a different answer, but I think we're on the same page with this.
I hope.
Yeah, of course. I love Portugal. I love Portugal. I think that Portugal is a place that we could retire in. I think I don't know, but we're also not at retirement age. So I think what will happen is we will live here for several more years, because it's going to probably take another year and a half, 2 years to actually get our property built. So we want to live in that for some number of years. We will probably go away for a bit, and then we'll come back. I love the Portuguese language. I love the Portuguese people. I feel very connected to this country. More
Oh,
than
so sweet.
yeah, more than other countries and places that we've been. I want to keep that connection. But I also think that we will have to seek opportunities, at least during our working years, in other places, and then come back.
Possibly come back. It's a
Yeah.
great place to retire. That's very true.
Yeah.
Well, I guess on that note,
Yeah.
so a
What a
few,
2023 it's been.
I know. A few final things just to remember. We've got Patreon if you would like to support us, and we've got some perks on there if you want to have an exclusive patron-only chat where you get to turn on your video and your mic as well and join the conversation rather than it being like this. Then check out our Patreon page for that and those different tiers. We also have consultations if you have specific questions. We've got our DIY course that we put together. We've got one for the D7, D8, and then also for living in Portugal, because once you move here, it's like, how do I do some of these things? Like get my mail, some funny things like that. So we also have that course, and we have that code December 2023 for that discount that you want to do before the end of the year, really. And I think that's mainly it, right?
That's it. We appreciate you for being here. And if you aren't subscribed, you need to hit the subscribe button.
Yes.
So,
Merry
join
Christmas,
us.
Happy New Year, and we'll see you all in 2024.
Let's get moving.
Bye.
And I put my hand the correct way. Bye.
Bye, everyone.